In this video, I'll show you how to see your Docker logs like this instead of this. This is not just more convenient, but it also gives you the power to keep and preserve your logs for a longer time. In Docker, you will lose container logs after each restart. It will make it very difficult or even impossible to debug some issues. With Grafana LOKI, you have more control and visualization on your logs. You can detect trending logs, filter by many factors, and so much more. I'll show you two methods. First, Grafana Cloud, and second, self-hosted one, and then we'll create a dashboard to visualize our logs. Let's get it started. Here in this terminal, I have SSH'd into a new server, and I just installed Docker on this. So if I run docker ls, docker ps, you can see that I don't have any containers. Now let's run a new container, docker run -d -name nginx fine. With this command, I will run nginx locally on this Docker. And if I run docker ps, I can see that I have this container running. Now, to see the logs of this container, I have to do docker logs nginx. And then I can see the logs, and it's basically plain text. Let's say, I don't know, one of these lines are quite important for me. But if for any reason I restart this, when I run docker logs nginx, I will see the logs of this running container. I cannot see the logs of previous container. So that's immediately a problem, because if you have an issue, if you have a bug in the killed container, it's very hard to debug it. So how can we solve that? We can send the logs of these Docker containers somewhere else. We can configure Docker to store logs into file locally so that we can check those later, but it's much easier if we send all these logs somewhere so that later we can access those logs with ease. In order to do that, we will use a Docker driver client from Grafana LOKI. So copy that and paste that into your terminal. Just make sure that this architecture of CPU is correct. I'm not running an ARM64, it's an AMD 64, so I'll choose AMD 64. Okay, and if I run docker plugin ls, I can see that I have LOKI latest, a description of LOKI logging driver, and it's enabled. Now the next step is to tell Docker to send all these logs to LOKI. Now in order to do that, head over to grafana.com, create a new account. On your free tier, you get a very generous plan. I want to use this for logs, and you can see that for logs, I get 50 gigabytes with 14 days retention. For my use case, 14 days is pretty much what I need. In my self-hosted version on my Proxmox machine, I also used 14 days. Then go to access policies and create access policy. For name, I will say, I don't know, LOKI. For realm, choose your stack. And for logs, I want to write logs. And everything else, just leave it as default. Click on create. And here, create a new token. Give it a name. I will say Docker server 1, my machine's name, and create. Copy this token and store it somewhere. We will need it in a few seconds. Then click on Grafana Cloud, scroll down to LOKI and choose send logs. Now we need this address right here. Copy that back to our terminal. Now we need to edit this file, etc/docker/daemon.json. Start a JSON. Then here we need to specify log driver. It will be LOKI. Then we have log opts. This one is another object. Now here we need to specify LOKI URL And now enter the URL. Now paste the token we created in the previous step. So it will be your username, colon, your token, @, and then the rest of the URL. And that will be it. Save the file and do systemctl restart Docker. Now to test if this works, I will start an Nginx just like before. So Docker run, yeah, this one. Okay, I have this enabled already, so let's delete it. The reason why I'm deleting that is this container was created with the previous configuration. So all the logs for this container will be sent to journalctl. I think this is the default configuration for logging driver. So I will delete that and recreate this one more time. Okay, now if I go to my Grafana Cloud again and click on launch here, it will open my Grafana panel. Then go to explore and choose Grafana Cloud - your instance name - logs. And now we can see we have some logs. Okay, now let's pick container name as a filter. And for value, you can see Nginx. And if I run query, you can see that I have a few logs, and these logs will match the logs on Docker. So let's actually test that. So Docker logs Nginx, you can see it has start worker processes with 30 and 31. If I switch to here, you can see the same exact lines. And the time is also the same thing. The only difference is this timestamp, and it's because under here, I'm using my browser time zone, which is UTC +1, and it will show me the results in my time zone. But back in Docker, if I run date, you can see the time is not in my time zone. So that's the reason for different time zone. So back to this page, let me show you a little bit more of this labels. So we filtered by the label of the container name. We can also do the same with other labels. For example, you can see we have source, service name, host, and file name. So if I choose host, it will use my host name on the machine. So if I have multiple machines and multiple machines are running the same container name, I can kind of aggregate all the logs into one place so that I can visualize and see all the errors or all the logs in one place. I can also create dashboards and visualization based on the host name and other factors. So just to show you that, if I want to see the logs for all the containers running on host Docker server 1, I can run this query and it will give me all the logs here. Okay, now I want to self-host a Grafana and a Loki instance on my Proxmox. So I've just created a new LXC container for my Loki and Grafana instance, and I will use a Docker to deploy this. So as you can see, I've already installed Docker on this container. Now I need to create a Docker compose. So I'm at root directory. I will create a directory called Grafana and cd into that. Now I will create a compose file and paste everything here. And here I also need to create another configuration file. So this file will be Loki config. And inside that, I will just paste everything. Just a few things here. As you can see on this line, I have retention period and max query lookback. Both of them are on 14 days. I think that's enough for me. If your use case is different, feel free to adjust it to higher or lower number. So I will save this file, copy this address, go back to my compose file again. On this line, I will paste that. So root Grafana and Loki-config. Yeah, that should do. So this configuration file that we just created will be mounted as this file inside this Loki container. So I believe everything else should be fine. I will save the file one more time. For all these configurations, there's a link in the description. Grab all of these from there and you're good to go. Docker compose op-d. Okay, docker compose op-d worked. Now if I run docker ps, I can see that containers are running. Now if I go to the IP address of this LXC container on port 3100, I can see that Loki is up and running. Now the next step is to config my other Docker instances on my local network to send their logs to this IP address. So this LXC is my main Docker instance. I'm running a lot of Docker containers on this one, and as you can see, the content of etc docker daemon.json is this. I'm sending all my logs for Docker containers into 192.168.2.108, and 108 is my old Grafana instance, which I'm using at the moment. So I'm not changing that because it will require me to recreate all the containers and so much pain. So I'll just show you that you need to do basically what we did on Grafana Cloud here. Okay, now I want to send all the logs from this LXC container to that Loki instance. So let's log in. Now I need to install the Loki plugin. Again, copy this line, paste that here and change this to your CPU architecture. And if I run docker plugin ls, I can see that it's running. And now let's change this file. And I need to change this IP to 124. Save it and do systemctl restart docker. I will run docker on -d name nginx alpine one more time here until it gets deployed. Let's go to 124 on port 3000. So this is the new Grafana stack that I deployed, and on port 3000 I have this up and running. So first thing that I do is sign in with admin. Let's skip that for now. Go to connections and here search for Loki. Add new data source. Here go with HTTP Loki 31,000 and everything else should be fine. Now if I go to explore, I should be able to query logs from Loki. After running nginx with the Loki data type, I can click on label and you can see container name and then nginx. And then you can see the logs. Okay, so far we managed to send logs from our Docker containers into either Grafana Cloud Loki or our self-hosted Grafana Loki. Now I want to show you my main Grafana panel deployed on my local machine and show you how exactly I can use that. So this is my main Grafana. If I go to explore and choose Loki, I can query all the logs based on different filters. So running this will give you all the logs. Now I can filter by different things. First, I will filter by host, and I'm sending logs from 3 hosts to this machine. So let's choose Docker. So my next filter will be container name. I want to see the logs for, let's say, for syncthing. After choosing these two, if I hit Shift and Enter, and you can see 2 logs, and it's basically from last 1 hour. I can change it to last 14 days because that's my retention policy for my logs. But for now, let's just keep it for last 6 hours. Now I can see the logs for this container I can explore and see the trending logs for different errors. Here we can include the time for each log. I can expand one of these logs and see different labels. And to see the log itself, I can just read it right here, or I can choose show context to see this log among all other logs. This is very useful when you want to explore a few lines above and below that specific log. Okay, now let's get rid of this and see the logs for all my containers running on Docker. And you can see there are tons of logs here from different services. Okay, you can see that the logs that I'm getting are pretty steady. It's not that much, but here and here I have received quite a lot of logs. So if I filter by this time frame, I can see that I have 301 logs with unknown log level. So if I want to investigate that, I can just choose this time frame, and then I can explore and see what's the exact reason for this log. Now let's go ahead and create a dashboard to visualize our logs. So I have already created this error logs dashboard for myself. Whenever I click on that and choose a time frame, let's say last 24 hours, I can see that I can see the distribution of logs. So I had 2 errors on this container and only 1 error on this container, because I have filtered these 3 dashboards to only show me errors. Now, if I just increase it to last 30 days, you can see that I only received 24 errors from this container and only 1 error from this container. So that's pretty much it. If you want to explore different dashboards that you can create with logs, you can go to import dashboard, click on grafana.com/dashboards, and here you can choose a data source to Loki, and now you can find so many dashboards. For example, this one looks good, this one looks good. So yeah, let's see these 2. If you want to import this, just copy this ID from here, paste that ID here, click on load, and it will automatically load that dashboard for you. You only need to choose your Loki instance here and choose your Prometheus and click on import. So I would suggest you to go ahead and read the documentation of Loki query language. It's pretty powerful. You can do a lot of things with that. Let's say, for example, I want to find something from last 2 days. I'm looking for a specific thing. So let's say I want to search for new media among all my logs. I choose the filters that I want. So host name, Docker container, and whatever. And then I can filter. And as you can see, it will immediately suggest you a few things. So I will say this one, I'm looking for new media. Now it will filter all the logs that has this new media inside it. I can add more filters, I can JSON parse, I can extract few things from JSON, and so much more. But I will not get into too much details, that's for another video, but make sure to check it out, Loki is awesome. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check this video, because in that video I will show you how to export your Docker containers metric into your Grafana panel. Having your logs and metrics together can help you build a more reliable system. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Thanks, until next time.